Hello, everyone, and welcome back to WABAN. I am your host, Nim, and I am joined here by Joker.
Well, howdy, partner. Doesn't he
Did he
do that
talk like
voice
that?
every once in a while? Oh, he does the voice.
Oh, I guess. Yeah.
That's a joke, remember?
Even though his friend is the one who's nicknamed Cowboy,
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, we watched
I mean,
Full
it
Metal
makes
Jacket.
sense, though, because, Cowboy was from Texas and all that, and then
Well, yeah. Yeah,
Joker
that's right.
made a joke and got, singled out for it, so...
Yeah. Yep. And then Pyle, it was because he was kind of seemed like a screw up and stuff, which was a reference to Gomer Pyle from the Andy Griffith Show, which was from the 60s. He was like a character who was always kind of a little dumb and slow. And then
it was calling him a pile of garbage or a
no, because he specifically said Gomer Pyle, and that's a character from the Andy Griffith Show, which is a sitcom from the 60s. And there was a spin-off show about the character Gomer Pyle joining the Marines.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So, yeah, no. My family used to watch the show when I was younger, so that's why I know that. But yeah, anyways, so that's what that's a reference to. But yeah, so Full Metal Jacket it's from the late 80s, I think. It came out in 87. So this is a Stanley Kubrick movie who's I mean, Stanley Kubrick is a very legendary director just for his he's a director who didn't direct a lot of movies, but the movies he did direct were very well made. It was he wouldn't direct a movie unless he had an idea for a movie or it was something that he really wanted to direct.
I didn't really know a lot about this movie, right? But even just watching through it once, I can see a lot of the stuff that they did very, very well.
Yeah, it's done very well, but it's it's hard to watch, but that's kind of the point. It's supposed you're supposed to make you cringe and be oh, war is terrible. Oh, the Vietnam War specifically, but war in general, it's it does a very good job at making you realize just the horrors of war.
Yeah, the only thing I knew about this movie was the meme from a while back, show me your war face, and the faces were all edited to be warped and messed up, so it was really funny.
Oh, yeah.
I was maybe there's a bit of comedy in here. It's the tiniest bit, sure, but not really.
There's definitely moments of comedy, but it's not. But that's not the point of the movie. It's definitely more because, I don't know. When I heard about people quoting this movie, because I've never seen it, I heard them quoting lines from the drill sergeant that they thought were funny lines and stuff. So I thought it would have a little bit more of a comedic edge to it, but when he's saying the crazy kind of funny lines, it's not really that funny though, because it's very just terrifying and very demeaning to everyone.
Right. Out of context, it can be a hilarious joke, but in context, it has this layer, this tone of just uncomfortableness, which works very well for the movie.
Yeah, and what's interesting because it kind of adds to this whole idea of okay, where do you draw the line of being too aggressive, too mean? Because obviously the point of being tough and aggressive and mean is to really toughen everybody up so that they're as effective soldiers as possible, which is what helps you win a war. But at the same time, it's okay, at what cost? You're really obviously and it's, I guess the idea is it's also supposed to weed out the weak people and stuff, and but it's just kind of like, oh, I don't know, I guess it just really makes you realize how, like, it's done out of necessity because they need people to be tough to be able to win the war. So it just kind of makes you realize
a lot of people can't handle that.
Yeah, that, and like war, it makes you realize just how war in general can bring out the worst in people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like human beings should never have to treat other human beings that way, especially human beings who are on their like side, kind of like from their own, you know, country.
Well, I mean, that's part of what I mean by people can't handle that. Like, there's Pyle, who did what he did, which is an extreme, but there's also the extreme of they survive, they go in there and they live with it. However, they're not okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also interesting thinking about like the time period too, because like, you know, some of these people don't want to be there because it was in middle of the Vietnam War. There was a lot of, you know, there was a draft where, you know, you kind of force men to go and train to be soldiers who don't even want to, which is, you know, what happens a lot in, you know, in wartime. It happened in World War II, World War One, you know, whatever, you know, all these different wars, including the Vietnam War. And that was like a big thing. You know, there was like the whole thing where like people who didn't want to go to war, fight in the war, like left to go to Canada so they could get away from it. Like that was like a thing back then during the Vietnam War. So you realize, like, you know, it's very likely that he doesn't even want to be there. Like, it's not like if you go, like nowadays, we're not actively in a war, or we don't have a draft going where people are forced to fight, at least right now. So it's like if somebody is in boot camp, it's like they chose to be there now, like where we are now in our country. But this at that time period, that's not the way it was. So it kind of makes it even worse in a way. Because it's like, if you're going to boot camp and you're dealing with all this stress and everything, now I think you technically do have a choice to leave. And also it's kind of like, you kind of know what you're getting into. You know, everybody knows boot camp sucks and it's like stressful and horrible. So it's like you kind of almost know what you're getting into, and it's like, you chose to go into the military. It's like whatever. But in this, it's kind of like, oh, you know, a lot of them didn't have a choice, so that kind of creates a different atmosphere around it. But
yeah, the movie does a great job of bringing out all that. Like, yeah, this is not a good time. There's nothing good about this situation.
Yeah. I mean, and just, it really, it just really emphasizes how horrible war is, and how it's like, war is literally like one of the worst kind of things that can happen to humans, I guess. Like, it's just to see, it's like, I don't know, like, because, you think about, like, there are many other things that cause lots of death and destruction other than war. But the difference is, like, you think about, let's say, like a disease that kills a bunch of people. At least then you can kind of, everybody can kind of come together and be like fighting against this common thing. It's just this disease. But in war, it's just so different, because it's like, oh, it's other human beings that are causing the death and destruction. And it becomes more of like a horrific thing because of that.
I mean, arguably, people can come together. It's just always against somebody else. So it has, once again, this tone of just, no, it's still not good.
Yeah, because it's like, in order for war to happen, to exist, human beings have to be terrible people. Like,
yeah, that's...
if all human beings were really nice, peaceful people who didn't want to needlessly harm anyone else, then war wouldn't exist. If every human being was like that, right? And it's like, I don't know, just seeing a movie like this really like emphasizes that, like seeing, and like the ending too really emphasizes that with that moment girl. The girl they shoot at the end, and he actually like puts her out of her misery at the end, and it's like a very rough moment for all of them. They're all standing there like, what do we do? And he's like, we can't leave her. They're like, do you want to finish her off? Like, and she keeps saying like, kill me. And like, it's just, that hit hard to like, when the credits started rolling, I was just like, fuck.
Yeah, honestly, a wonderful way to sum this movie up is the halfway point is the sergeant getting shot and the guy who did it committing suicide right then and there.
Yeah.
That is the halfway point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's two sections of the movie. The first section of the movie is boot camp is terrible. This guy is the drill sergeant is a fucking like asshole to them to toughen them up, and then this is what it leads to. And then the second half is, oh, here's the actual war. Here's them actually going out and like to see there was that really interesting section that I really liked, which was like all of them being interviewed about like their views on the war and stuff. And like each person had something different to say, and some of them were like, yeah, we gotta end this war, we're fighting for freedom. Some of them were like, I don't know what we're doing, whatever, like I'm just following orders, you know. Some of them are like, you know, the one guy's like, oh, do we belong here? He's like, probably not, I belong here though. And like it just like this weird, I don't know, it's like
this mixture of like not understanding what's going on at all, or just going with it because they get like either some sick enjoyment out of it at this point, or because like they've been like a hatred for that people was ingrained in them at that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's another thing this movie really shows you too, is like the idea of the enemy sort of being created as this other, right? Which is the idea of like, oh, they're not worth anything because they're just, you know, I don't really want to say the word they use because it's not really, you know, it's kind of an offensive word. Right. But, you know, that was like accurate to what it was like.
Yeah, that is, to put it bluntly, and like, I guess like pure like wartime logic, dehumanizing the enemy is a very useful tool. It is a terrible thing, but like, if you don't view your enemy as a person, it's much easier to, you know, attack them.
Right, exactly. It's like if you see them as, because realistically, a lot of those people you're fighting aren't necessarily bad people. Maybe the people in charge of them are, maybe, like, I don't know, you know, depending on what the war is and why it's being fought, whatever. But like the individual people you're shooting at are probably, honestly, in a lot of ways, very similar to you. They're going through a very similar thing. They're forced to fight a war that they might not want to fight. I don't know. Like, so, but if you see them that way, if you see the idea that they're very similar to you, it's going to make it, you know, a lot harder. It's going to really mess with your brain and make it a lot harder to kill. Like, and it's like you really you understand why so many people came home from that war in particular with extreme PTSD. Like, it was just a whole messed up situation. You know, it's just,
honestly, that like last conflict of the movie displays it perfectly. Just, there's a sniper, you can't see them. They are practically torturing these two guys, like first one, then two guys out in front of you to lead you to your death so they can shoot you. They kill a few guys while you get over to them, and when you're finally there, it's a little girl. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and I don't know, it's interesting because like that's like the climax of the movie, but it's not like what you would you'd expect, like, oh, this war movie, the climax is going to be this big battle, and each of the characters are going to have their big heroic moments. No, there's nothing heroic about this climax. It's all just messed up, like, not from all perspectives. Like, what she was doing, like, of like torturing them to like kind of lure them out, was kind of messed up. What they did is kind of messed up. It's like
but it's also they're all doing it out of trying to survive and also trying to follow orders to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, they're just no winners. None at all.
Yeah, there are no winners in war, right? Except for the people at the top in charge of the war. You know, that's kind of the basic, sick, twisted thing about war, right? Because, you know, the person who starts the war, who's in charge of it, they're not the ones fighting it. They're not the ones going through the horrific things. They're just telling people to go do it. Mm-hmm. And so it's like everyone, the common person, no, there's no winners in war. It's just kind of all around messed up. And yeah, this movie does a great job of showing that.
Do you want to just go into the details, a few of the like progressions, like especially of Pyle?
Oh yeah, so that was really interesting. So when the movie starts and a lot of the beginning sections of the movie focus a lot on him. It focuses on how he's just not doing well with the training and how he's really made fun of for that by the drill instructor, and everything. And I actually started to think that he was going to be kind of like the protagonist of the story, like he was going to be the main character. Yeah, and he was going to eventually, you know, finally work hard to actually push through and do good at the training, and then he was going to go and have some heroic moment out on battle or something.
Right.
I did not realize, and it's the weird thing because, like, I have heard before that the whole him committing suicide thing happened, but I completely forgot. Like, I have heard of it. Like, when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, I did hear that before. I forgot that it happened, so I wasn't really ready for it. But he always kind of seemed a little weird and like shy and just kind of awkward. And you started to realize, like, oh, he's really good at shooting. That's one thing he's actually doing good at. And then
there's the moment where the sergeant makes Joker, like basically babysit him, teach him everything.
Yeah.
And he gradually starts getting it, but then he doesn't. They brutally beat him up with like soap in their blankets, I think.
Yeah. That scene was like horrible because it's like almost like they're all kind of trying to like pay back for, because like he messed up and he kind of punishes the whole platoon instead of, you know, right? And so they're kind of like mad at him, even though it wasn't like his fault. He just accidentally made a mistake or whatever. Like,
yeah, but the sergeant used that, like the jelly donut thing, to harbor that hatred specifically. Like, he shouted out, I'm going to punish all of you for it, get down and do push-ups, while the culprit eats the donut. Like, that was planned out for them to hate him at that point.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like he maybe was hoping they would do something like that, like beat him up or something to maybe help toughen him up or something. But then, like, he's sitting there, like, basically crying and like wailing out in pain, and like Joker's sitting there and you could see the look on his face, like he's like, shit, what did we just do? Like, it's and then
I just noticed during that, while everyone else is just fully in it hitting him, and Joker's off in the corner a little bit away, he's just waiting, like debating if he's gonna do it, and then he does, and he goes all in on it.
Well, it takes a little bit of convincing too, though. It's like, come on, do it. And he's just like, okay. And he does. And it's like, So I think from what I heard, this movie might be based on a book, I believe. And I'm guessing in the book it's told from his perspective.
From
Joker's perspective, right? Which makes sense because in the movie there are narration parts from him, and he is a writer, so it's kind of like you can imagine maybe it was like, oh, he was journaling all of this, and like that was his writing, kind of. So that's kind of that's the reason why I think they added that, right? It was kind of supposed to be like, again, as if he had been journaling it, because we know, he's a writer. So
Okay, yeah, it was based on the novel The Short Timers by Gustav Hasford.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if it's like a first person's perspective book, like written like from his perspective, or not. But based on how it was presented in the movie, I would imagine it was. Maybe not. Maybe that was just kind of how it was presented, just because of the narration bits that were in the movie.
Information on that right away, but I mean, it makes sense to me, but could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do know Stanley Kubrick is known for not necessarily always being accurate to the book he bases things on, like because he directed The Shining, and I know I've never read The Shining book, but I know Stephen King hated the movie because it changed things and that he didn't like. It was very different than like how the book presented it. So, but yeah, and then that moment where he does shoot the drill instructor and shoot himself was just like a big shocking moment that was like handled very well. Like you see, he has that like crazed look in his eyes, and he's just like, and
he's shouting Joker's his own orders.
Yeah. Because, I mean, at this point, it's been drilled into their head so much that it's just like, it's just part of, it's crazy. Well, and it's like, but that's the thing, that the movie takes its time to really show everything that he went through. So you understand what drove him to this.
Yeah, even him talking to his gun earlier and like getting better at stuff, and the sergeant praising him finally.
Yeah. But like still in his brain he can't, like he's just thinking about what the drill sergeant put him through. And all he can think is like, I mean, his life sucks. It's miserable. He knows like he's probably going to go off to war, be miserable, and die anyways, right? So he's like, I don't know, I guess he's just kind of like needs a way out of it, and it's like, and that's his way out of it.
I mean,
and he has his final moment of revenge before killing himself. It's like, I also thought the drill sergeant's response was interesting. Instead of like trying to be calm and be like, because a lot of times in a situation like this, you want to kind of be like, okay, it's okay, you could put the gun down. You want to be a little bit more calm. But he goes right into his drill sergeant mode of like, that's it, Sergeant Pie, you're gonna put this down. What are you doing? And like, it's like, yeah, you're in trouble, blah blah blah. I'm like.
That whole moment is so well done.
Yeah, it is.
I think that was the quietest I've ever heard the sergeant talk, but it wasn't quiet by any means. It was still like drill sergeant stuff.
Well, that's the interesting thing, is like that's a character who we never see that character outside of his drill sergeant mode. Like we don't know what he's like when he's like, just hanging out with a friend or something, like, because like even in a moment where it would make sense to be a little bit more calm, and like he still isn't. He's still like just screaming at him, and that drives him to do it even more.
Right. And then there's like when the sergeant first walks in and he's asking what Joker's doing. Joker's reaction to that like just hit me a few minutes ago, of like, he didn't break like, sir, the private's duty is to inform the sergeant of blah blah blah, of like has loaded live rounds. It wasn't panicked like he's loaded. It wasn't like him breaking that character, if you want to put it that way, at all. It was ingrained in him so much that even in this life or death situation where he could be shot at any moment, he still did it in that exact way that the sergeant has always made him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of what that training is supposed to do, is that even in life or death situations, you're still, you know, able to handle yourself, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like the whole idea is like preparing you for war. So in a war situation, if, people are dying around you, you're getting shot at, you need to
But
still be able to like function, that's kind of the
yeah,
idea of the
but
training.
what
So,
really hit me was it wasn't just him, accurately conveying information. It was, begin with sir, end with sir, or for yourself as the private. Like,
mhm.
all of that stuff stayed. It wasn't just accurately conveying the information that he needed to know. It was
Yeah.
also everything that he's done since the boot camp started.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. It's like I don't know. When and like it's weird cuz like the movie starts and then you're automatically already in this like boot camp. It just starts with everybody getting their heads shaved and then it immediately
Mm-hmm.
goes into it. And it doesn't, the movie never like lets up. There's never that many, like, at least for the first half of the movie, there's no real scenes of like levity of people just kind of like taking a second to hang out or stuff. It's just constant
Yeah,
intense boot camp, intense boot camp, intense boot camp,
not only that, like
nonstop.
right at the beginning, they really they have that moment of, show me your war face and all that kind of stuff and giving out names to people.
Yeah.
And you might find it like kind of funny at first, right? Because like
Mm-hmm.
I was suspecting, it might be a little bit of a comedy because Warface, that's a funny meme. But he goes over to Pyle. He tells him to get on his knees and to choke himself. And
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah.
moment was like really like it ingrained like to Pyle, but also to the audience that like, no, this isn't going to be a fun time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And from then on, it isn't. It's just kind of,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just constant cutting between different moments of just difficult boot camp stress, horribleness,
Mm-hmm.
no moments of levity until it's almost like the beginning of the movie is like one big like just slow montage and build up to the moment of until Pyle shoots himself, and that's like the climax of the first section of the movie. Like it's the slow build up to that, and then the rest of the movie is like almost a different movie, right? It's like, okay, he went through, Joker moved on, like he witnessed that, and now he's actually going out to war. Like that's part of what
Right.
he carries that with him, when he goes out into war, and it's like, yeah, it's just
I don't know. It really struck me the contrast between the two halves too, because like never do they mention what happened with the sergeant and Pyle. They just move on with their lives, and that's it.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of, and there's really no telling how much time has passed since then.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of they're out there, and like at the beginning, there's not very high stakes because for the main character, because main character is not really doing a super dangerous job.
Mm-hmm.
He's not facing a lot of direct combat, so far in the war. He's just kind of, he's writing articles and stuff. So, and then, obviously he gets sent out to go with the one squad and everything, which leads to the climax. But, and that's like the first time in the movie where there's like where there's like a moment of like moments of like a few moments of just kind of like levity, of just kind of like chill moments of like characters just kind of, it's like weird. It's like the first moment of like chill moment is like when they're actually out in the place where the war is going on, not where they're at home training,
Mm-hmm.
It's like interesting, and you can
then
see
he meets a cowboy again, and they're like act like best friends, even though like obviously they didn't show that relationship develop at all. But it was like, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, they went through that horrible experience together, and now they're back again going through another horrible experience. Like, it makes sense they would rely on each other.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like you really do see like there's a lot of the coping mechanisms people use to get through just going through all this horribleness. Like, and you can see how crazy it makes people. Like, they're on the helicopter, and there's that guy just shooting any like Vietnamese people he sees. Doesn't even know, as they're going, doesn't know who's on what side, who's innocent, who's not. He's just kind of like, yep, they're all whatever, and it's just kind of, it just happens. It's not like, it's just kind of, it happens and they move on. Yep. It's just a little moment of like, oh, okay, this is the way things are. This is the way this guy is, you know? And he's like laughing at it and everything. And then you're just kind of like, all right. Yeah. Because I saw him shooting and I'm like, wait, are they in a war zone? They're not. Like, who's he shooting at? And then it showed. And then it, like, because for a little bit he was just shooting and didn't show what he was shooting at. And then you just see like people walking by and he just shoots them. And I'm like, oh, gotcha. Okay. That's a little weird. And like, they're not even like, I don't even think he's is he technically even supposed to be shooting these people, or is it just because it seems like they're just flying them just to it's the only purpose of them flying the helicopter was for transportation purposes of like transporting people, these people.
Meanwhile, the guy on there was just shooting away at anyone he saw.
And so it's like, it made me think like, that's not really part of your mission right now, right? You're just helping transport, and like I'm sure they had him there as like protection in case they got attacked or something, but like nobody's attacking you. These are just people walking by. Like,
yeah, no, pretty sure that's a war crime.
Yeah,
just casual.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Like, and then like you could see just how little he cares, because they're like, how can you kill women and children? And instead of, you know, just like, oh, it's easy. You just got to give them less you know, basically because they run slower, less lead time, or what, lead them a little less or whatever he said, I'm like, okay, that's what kind of movie this is. Okay, you just like. Yeah,
no holds barred. Just pull out all the stops to make you realize how, you know, terrible a situation it is. It's like it's not there to make you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. This is like truly is like I guess this is like a true sort of showing of like a war. The reason why this is considered a great war movie, like one of the greatest war movies, is because it really does highlight what war is. It really, like, you know, what it really does to people and what it really is. I mean, a lot of other war movies do as well. But yeah. I don't know what else I have to really say about it other than like, yeah, it does a great job at really just displaying
anything. The entire movie is just about like hammering in that one idea of, yeah, this sucks. There's nothing good about it. You know, it's not going to get better.
Yeah, like, it's all about just showing the horribleness, and that's it, you know?
Yeah. You get a small break when he's a reporter, when Joker turns into a reporter, and he's like, yeah, you know, it's kind of boring for a moment, and the guy sends him out to the field. It's like, oh yeah, there are these bodies now covered in lime, and then there's he actually gets starts getting shot at and is an actual battlefield, and then there's I lost count of how many times the commanding officer of whatever like squadron or mission he was on just got shot, and they were just like, "Yep, next person in line, step up," and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's kind of how it is, and it's like, and then they really portray the idea of how difficult it can be to follow orders sometimes, because the guy's like, "Hey, we're not going to help them because if we do that, we're just going to get shot too. We don't know where the sniper is," which like makes sense why that's his orders, but it also makes sense why the guy has trouble following it, because he's like, he's in his, he's like, we're just going to leave them to die, like, so. It just kind of shows just yeah, it's a difficult situation. What do you do? They request help from tanks. They can't get it. Okay, what do you do? Like, imagine being in that situation. Imagine being there. Like, you know, and trying to handle that. Like, it's just really, it's like, and it makes you realize fully, like, no wonder people coming home from war are like messed up, they have PTSD and all this, like yeah, that's that this kind of stuff happening is gonna really mess you up.
I keep thinking about how all the quotes that I've known from this movie, and there were quite a lot, surprisingly, all of them were like mainly like funny stuff, show me your war face, blah blah blah, all that crap. But that's not what the movie is at all.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, pretty much, yeah. And yeah, and like yeah, I'm trying to think of other things I really thought this was an interesting idea too. So like, I like the scene where, so like, he has the helmet that says "Born to Kill" on it, right? And then
the pin.
He has the peace sign pin, which I thought was really cool, because and then like he's like, oh, it's like I guess it's to show the duality of man or whatever, and like he's like, is this some kind of sick joke? And I'm like, like that was cool, because like at the time the peace sign was used as a way to protest the war a lot.
Oh, right.
Like, this was the time period where there was like, all the like the big like hippie movements and stuff of like protesting the war, and like the peace sign was like their symbol. So it would be, it did seem kind of weird that like a soldier in the war is like has this peace sign, like, oh, are you against the war? Are you against us? Like, it was kind of like,
right. I mean, even without that, it's weird, but
well, yeah, but like, just especially, it's like, of all the wars, like especially this war, because at the time of what that symbol really represented at the time, it obviously still represents peace, but like there was a different, it was just the main association people would have had with it at the time is like people who are really against this war specifically, and like the huge protesting against this war that was happening at the time, more so than any other war, really. This one was protested a lot in our country, in America, and yeah, so I just thought that was an interesting detail.
You mentioning that just made me realize that duality of man stuff comes up in that final scene, because at that point I don't think Joker got a kill yet, at least not a confirmed one.
Yeah.
And then like, the whole duality of man thing, born to kill, and the peace sign, but he was mainly, he was a reporter, he didn't want to kill all that much.
Yeah.
And then at the end, when he puts the girl out of her misery, he finally gets a kill. But it is comparatively for a relatively good reason. So
right,
it calls back to that duality of man stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just this movie in general is just really well put together, with all that kind of, all the themes and the what it's trying to say, and what it's like, It's just really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing. It is a tough moment at the end because they're all like, "We're gonna leave her," because they all. I don't think it's like this idea of like nobody wants that on their conscience. Like, oh, I'm the one who killed her, which is why nobody wants to shoot her.
I mean, that two of them actually want her to live long enough to suffer.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, because they're like, we'll leave her because they don't. But it's like you also have to think about the fact, well, if we leave her, she's just going to suffer. Then, like, it's better to just, if we're going to leave her anyways, it's better to just kill her now, you know. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and it's a difficult thing to do because, you know, just pointing a gun at somebody who's helpless on the ground and pulling the trigger isn't an easy thing to do for, you know, the average person. And it's really shown in that scene. Like, you can tell that it's like very hard for him to do that, but he does it out of mercy for like, like, I don't want them to leave her suffering. And it's just, like I don't know. It's just really interesting the fact that is the climax of this war movie. You know, when you think of like a war movie climax, you really think of like, oh, it's going to be a big battle. And there's going to be, you know, it's going to have our different characters having these heroic moments of like saving their fellow soldiers and like all this stuff. This doesn't have that climax that you would expect.
It has this horrible moment that nobody feels good about, ending in a moment of mercy.
And then right after that goes into them singing about Mickey Mouse.
Oh yeah, that is what happens, isn't it?
Yeah, like that's I just think that's an interesting sort of juxtaposition of like, because you know it's like thinking about the time period. Obviously, they would have grown up. These characters would have grown up with probably a lot of Mickey Mouse stuff because of the time period. So they're just kind of it's like they're singing it out of a sense of like, oh, we all know this song. It's gonna kind of help us distract us from the horrific things that are going on. So yeah, of course they're gonna sing a Mickey Mouse song. You know,
it's just them trying to move on with their lives and get through.
Yeah, it's like just that idea of like finding anything you can to cope with the horrific things that happen. That is really interesting, and that's the end of the movie right there. It's just them singing Mickey Mouse, and I think he has one final narration thing, like inner monologue thing, or writing, whatever it's supposed to be, and then it ends. It's
there's it's such a good movie. It's so well done, but it's like it doesn't have the satisfying ending that you might expect. It doesn't even have like, oh, something changed in the overarching war of the movie. Like, nope. It's just they're going to move on with their lives and continue doing what they've been doing.
The plot isn't focused on the war as a whole. It's focused on like, oh, what's the advancement of the war? How does the war end? That doesn't matter to the movie. What matters is just the things that happen during war, the horrific things that happen during war, the like what it can bring out in people, you know, the people who aren't necessarily bad people, but like are, you know, what it can bring out the worst in people, you know, even because, you know, that's just the nature of war. Like it's a movie that's hard to watch because of just how, but I'm glad, like it's a movie I'm not going to just sit down and watch this movie for a fun evening. Like, hey, everyone, want to sit down and enjoy good old Full Metal Jacket? Yeah, we're just gonna, you know, like it's definitely one of those movies where it's like you really like I think after it was over, I was like, I need to do something to like decompress after that. I was like, okay. Right. And I sat and I like played Minecraft for a little bit, and I was like just, you know, listening to like, you know, how like Minecraft has like some calming music in it, and I'm like just relaxing with the Minecraft music while like doing stuff, and I'm like, there we go, I needed this.
You know what happened to me after I got done? I watched it in VR. So when my friends like showed up in the room, like as I was finishing watching it, and he like dragged me to play a VR version of Super Monkey Ball, and I just obsessed and went insane over melons afterwards because
There you
instead of
go.
bananas, they were melons.
There you go. That's a good way to decompress.
Which
For a second, I thought you were going to say like you went and played like a war video game. You know, like
no.
Oh yeah, I went and played like Call of Duty and killed a bunch of people, huh? After watching this movie.
But thinking about it now, the reason why I went like batshit insane over collecting melons in this like ball rolling game might have been because I watched this movie beforehand.
Yeah, and it's like you needed that de-stressor, decompress. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. That's like after it was over, I was just like, oh, like it ends on such a like, you know, just depressing kind of note.
Yeah, it's like the movie just took one final swing at you before you left.
Yeah, after everything that already happened. Yeah. Well, right, because there's in a way, this essentially is like, it's almost like there's two movies in here, and each one has its own fucked up climax. The first one is Pyle killing the drill instructor and then shooting himself. And then the second one is them taking out the sniper, who turns out to be this little girl, and the like, oh, who's going to shoot her? I don't know. Should we leave her? We should leave her here. No, but like put her out, and her like just slowly going, kill me over and over again. And like, yeah. So yeah, it's almost like two short movies, two like hour-ish long movies put together. And to create one overall experience.
Double the fucked upness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if I have a whole lot more to say about it.
I mean, I think we've covered most of what we're gonna get out of it. Is bad. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Like,
but terrible.
We could mention the casual prostitution, but I mean,
that was one of the references that I knew. The sucky, blah blah, all that crap. It's just so stupid.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't have a lot more to say. So I guess we can probably be generally done talking about the movie, if you're okay with that. So I definitely see why it's like a well-known movie, and why it's, I mean, it is Stanley Kubrick, so whenever he directed a movie, it was always like big deal. So I'd like to go back and watch some of other Stanley Kubrick's movies. I've only seen, this is the third Stanley Kubrick movie I've seen so far, because I've seen The Shining and I've seen A Clockwork Orange.
Right, you did mention putting like basically all of them on the list that we have, right?
Yeah. So we currently have a list of potential movies to do, and we kind of sometimes pick from those movies when we whenever we decide what movie we're doing next. So for those of you who don't know, I don't know if I've ever actually mentioned that, so I wasn't sure if you would. But anyways, probably not. So anyways, that's about all for this episode. So next week on the podcast, we are going to talk about something completely different, something actually fun to watch. Cowboy Bebop. Yeah. So we talked about the first half of the show last week, so we're going to finish talking about the show this week, because there's 26 episodes. We did 13. We talked about the first 13 last week. We're going to watch the last 13, finish talking about that. So that's next week. So definitely be excited for that. That'll be up on next Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time, because that is when every episode of the podcast is released, is every Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. So there are multiple different places you can listen to it. You can listen to it on our YouTube channel, which is titled WABAN. There should be a link in the description to that, we have the podcast there. We also have some gaming videos we've been doing, so definitely check that out. Subscribe, and so you don't miss any new videos, new uploads. But also, you can listen to it on multiple different audio platforms, including things like Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And also, you could check out my YouTube channel if you'd like. It's called Nim TV. That should be linked in the description as well. I do sort of movie review type content, little video essays, whatever interests me at the time about movies and TV shows. So yeah, you can definitely check that out if you'd like as well. Anyways, that is about all for today. So thank you all for listening to WABAN. I've been Nim.
And I'm Cub.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.